Hello, we're sticking with area today. We're going to do areas of composite shapes this week. I'll explain that in a wee minute, but first of all, we've got a couple of starter questions to do. So, firstly, which of these are multiples of 3? So remember, there's a trick for checking if something's a multiple of 3. Remember, if it's a multiple of 3, that means it's in a 3 times table. So the trick for checking if a number's in a 3 times table is to add the digits together. And if your answer is in the 3 times table, then your original number is in the 3 times table. So looking at the first one, if we do 4 add 2 add 8, so we're going to get 14 if we do that. 14 is not in the 3 times table, so neither is 428. Okay, next one, 136. So 1 add 3 is 4, add 6 is 10. 10 is not in the 3 times table. Next, 5 add 1 is 6. And 6 is in the 3 times table, so that one is a multiple of 3. Next one, 8 add 0 add 3 is 11. Not in the 3 times table. 1,542, when we add those up, 1 add 5 is 6, add 4 is 10, add 2 is 12, which is in the 3 times table. And 7 add 0 add 2 is 9, so that's in the 3 times table. And 207 also adds up to 9. Okay, so the 4 circled numbers are the ones out of that list that are multiples of 3. Okay, and then a little bit of sequences here, find the next 3 numbers. So if we look at what's happening as we go up here, let's see if the gap is the same each time. So we've added 4 here and again there, and it looks like adding 4 is the rule for this sequence. So if we add 4 onto 21, we get 25. Add another 4 is 29. And add another 4 is 33. Okay, and then the next sequence, if we look at the gaps between the numbers, well, we can see that they're not the same. Okay, so it's not a simple add-in this time. So let's look at those numbers and see if we recognise them as from anywhere else. So those of you that remember my classroom wall beside the windows, remember there's a set of numbers on the wall there, and they're called square numbers. So this is 1 times 1, or 1 squared. This is 2 squared, 2 times 2, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, 5 times 5. So the next numbers will be the answers to 6 squared, 7 squared, and 8 squared. So 6 squared is 6 times 6. 7 squared is 7 times 7. And 8 squared is 8 times 8. Okay, so today, so all this week, we're looking at areas of composite shapes. So that means shapes that are made from putting shapes together. Okay, so today we're going to look particularly at L shapes. So before we do that, let's just recap. To find the area of a rectangle, remember you're doing length times breadth, and it doesn't matter if you call that the length and that the breadth, or the other way around, because they're being multiplied together and the answer is the same. That has to make sense, because if that rectangle was drawn on its side, it'd still be the same rectangle, wouldn't it, with the same area? Okay, so then back to finding missing lengths that we did a little bit when we were doing perimeter last week. Week before last. So remember, it's all about horizontal lines and vertical lines. All right. So for example, to find this missing length here, we need to remember that that line and that line will add up to the same as that line. Okay. And we can see that because if I just pick up this line here, move it, we can see that those 2 lines together make the same length line as at the bottom there, the 20. So Put that back where it was. Oops. Oh, missed a bit of it there. Hold on. Let's pick it up properly. There we are. So, putting it back there. Anyway, so most of you will be ahead of me anyway, because we've got 16 add this line here has to make 20. So this line must be 4 centimetres. Okay. Then looking at the vertical lines, this line must be the same length as these two lines when they're put together. And again, we can show that by picking the line up and moving it. So we can see that 6 and this line here make 14, just like the 14 that is here. Okay, so in that case, we'll put this one back. I think I've taken a bit of the red one with me there, but never mind. Right, so that must mean that that missing line, 6 add what is 14, or 6 add 8 is 14. Okay, so we're not going to do anything with that shape. I just wanted to recap finding missing lengths, and we're going to do that here as well. So first of all, to find this length all the way across here, that must mean that it's the same as that, add that. So 11 add 9 is 20. Remember, the units have to be correct. And then when we're looking at down the way, 8 and 3 make this one here. So that must mean that's 11 metres. Okay, so finding missing lengths is going to be important when we're going on to finding the area of L shapes. Right, so having a look at this. So look at the first one here, this one. So we want to find the area of that. So take a moment to think about how you might find the area of that. Pause the video if you want to actually go ahead and work it out and see if you've done it right. So we've got two options written at the side here. We can split this shape into 2 rectangles. Now the choice would be you either split it there and get the 2 rectangles here and here, or you split it there and get the 2 rectangles there and there. So that's one option. The other option, option 2 here, is to complete the big rectangle and subtract. So what I mean by that is if we made that into a big rectangle, then the rectangle all the way around only needs this bit taken out to give you that L shape. So we're either splitting it into two or more rectangles and adding them together, or we make the bigger rectangle and then we subtract the corner rectangle that's not part of the original shape. Okay, so what we'll do is, first of all, we're going to do it both ways. Okay, so I'll need to write quite small here. So let's do it by splitting up. Let's split this way. Okay, so the correct way to set this out is to use your formulas as usual. All right, so we would use A equals L times B. All right, so actually what I'm going to do is change these to 1 and 2 so we don't get confused, because we've already got an A in our formula. Okay, so first one, the area is going to be length times breadth. So the length of this rectangle is 7. We don't have the breadth of this rectangle. We're going to need to work that out. So remember, all the way down there is 8. That much of it, or that much of it, is 4. So the bit left must also be 4. Okay, so the area of rectangle 1 is going to be 7 times 4. So that would be 28. Okay, for number 2, the area is going to be length times breadth again. So the length of that one is 9. The breadth of that one is 4. So we haven't needed to find that missing length there. So it'll be 9 times 4, which is 36. And then the total area is equal to 28 add 36, which gives you 64 square centimetres. Okay, so that's using the first method where we split into rectangles and then add them together. Okay, let's get rid of my scribbles from here. Then we're going to look at the second method where we complete the big rectangle and subtract. So I'm going to have to move this out of the way anyway. Okay, so completing the big rectangle will be here. So now the big rectangle and the small rectangle, we're going to need to find their areas and subtract them. Okay, so we're still talking about rectangles, so we'd still write down A equals L times B. So I would write A big to show that this is the area of the big one. So the big one, here's the length and breadth. We've got 9 by 8, so that's 72. And then the area of the small one is this times this. So this, we already worked out a minute ago, was 4, because this add that 4 has to make 8. And that line across there, well, it's 9 all the way across. It's 7 to there, so that must be 2. So we've got 4 by 2. Remember, it doesn't matter what order we do these in. So that would be 8 square centimetres. And then the area of the L shape is going to be the 72. Take away the 8, which gives us the 64 square centimetres that we had for the answer when we did it the other way. Okay, so nobody's going to push you into doing these a certain way. You should do them whatever way you think is best. Okay, sometimes it depends on the information that you give them. Right, so what we'll do, we've got 2 examples here. I've got any more after that? I think we've got one more. Yeah, so 2 examples here. So what we'll do is we'll do the first one by splitting into 2 rectangles. We'll do the second one by making it a big rectangle and a small rectangle. And then the third one, we're going to have a look at it and decide what's the best thing to do. Okay, so we're going to split this one into rectangles, and I'm going to split the rectangles. Let's do there. Oops, there. So that's rectangle 1 and that's rectangle 2. Okay, so area is length times breadth because we're dealing with rectangles. So the length of area 1, rectangle 1, is, the length is 20 and the breadth is 10. So that's 300. I'm not actually going to put the units on just now. We don't need to include them till the end. Okay, and for rectangle 2, the area is length times breadth. We don't have either of those just now. So this length here, we need to have a look and see that 16 add this length here are going to make 20. So that one's 4 millimetres, sorry. And the breadth of this rectangle here, well, this one and 10 make 18, so that must be 8. So we've got 4 by 8 for this little rectangle at the bottom, rectangle 2. So that's 32. And then the total is 300, add 32. I'm not doing that as a chimney sum because we can all do that. I'm not going to write it at the end because it's going to be squished up. And the units are square millimetres. Okay, so to recap there, get rid of all these scribbles. What we did was split that into 2 rectangles, and we worked out the area of each and then added them together. Okay, the next one we're going to do by adding in the little bit that we need to make this a whole big rectangle. So we're going to add in this bit up here, and we're going to work out the area of the big rectangle, so that's this one, take away the area of the little one, which is that one. Okay, so the way we'll write that, again, because we're using the formula area equals length times breadth, we'll just write that at the beginning. And then the area of the big rectangle is length times breadth. So length is 10, and breadth, well, we don't have that there, so we need to look at the lines that we've got that go vertically, and we've got that one and that one. So 5 add 5 makes 10. So this big one's actually a square, so we've got 100 there. Then we need to work out the area of this little rectangle so we can take it away. So the little rectangle is 5, and we don't have that length there, so we need to just check. So all the way across there would be 10. That bit of it is 4, so that bit of it must be 6. So the area of the small rectangle is 6 by 5, which is 30. So the area of the L shape is 100, take away 30, which is 70, and it's square centimetres. So one last question, and we're going to have a look at it and see what we know and work out if there's maybe a better way or if it doesn't really matter. Okay, well, what we can see with this one is if we split it into two rectangles, if we split it there, then we know the length and breadth of that rectangle, and we know the length of this one, so we've only got one thing to find. Okay, so that might be the easiest way. If we were doing it as the big rectangle take away the small rectangle, then we don't have that length all the way across there, and we don't have that length all the way down there. We'd have to find both of those. So I would say for this one, it's probably just as well to split it into the two rectangles, because we've only got one number that we need to find, and we can see that it's this line here, and this line here is made up of 4 and 3. So if we put that in before we start, then we'll call that one rectangle 1 and that one 2. And so our working, you need to write down the formula. Then number 1, the area is length times breadth, so that's 7 times 7. I'm just going to show you a slightly different way of writing this down so that you can save a bit of space if you want to. The second rectangle, the area is 4 times 4. That's 16. So the total area is equal to 49 add 16. 9 and 6 is 15. 4 and 1 is 5, add the 1 makes 6, and it would be square centimetres. Okay, so that's finding the areas of L shapes. So it's up to you whether you split it into two rectangles and add them together, or complete the bigger rectangle and subtract the little one. It's up to you. Okay, there are questions for you to try though. Well done.